Welcome to the Press Row. Behind-the-scenes stories from the world of sports media. Press Row. Insight and interviews from around the sports world. Now here's your host, Jonah Siegel.
Welcome back in the Press Row. Jonah here in Seattle. Super psyched for today's guest. We're going to talk NHL hockey with former NHL player Frankie Corrado, turned broadcaster on TSN. You hear him on Overdrive. He's been on Leafs Lunch. You see him doing some Habs games. He is, in my opinion, he's the great hope. He represents the next generation of broadcasters. He's starting to get more and more coverage around the game. Really interesting discussion coming up, what it's like to be a player, how he got started as a broadcaster. Really interesting insight on coaching, which I don't think you've heard too many places. So sit back, relax, enjoy my discussion with Frankie Corrado. Welcome back in the Press Row. Jonah here in Seattle. Good day to you. Hope all is well in your world. We are super stoked to have a new guest here, someone we have been hunting down for a very long time. He's super busy, and with the playoffs in hockey, thank God, winding down. Not that we're sick of hockey, but the calendar has hit like the middle of summer everywhere. It's enough. He is Frankie Corrado, TSN hockey analyst. Frankie, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a little while coming, but happy we're finally able to connect. And how you doing?
Yeah, it's everything's good. Life is good. My kids are home from college. Everything is no major complaints. How are things in your household?
Good. You know what? It's busy. So we have 3-month-old twins, identical girls. They're doing awesome. They're growing a bunch. We actually, we thought they would be in the NICU a little longer because they were, 7 weeks premature. So they got out of there quickly, and that really helped things out. And now we're just, just kind of in the daily grind of that. But it's been awesome juggling that and work. And there's a lot going on. There's not a lot of sleep, but that's okay. I think you just kind of learn to manage without the sleep is what I'm figuring out.
It's amazing. The newborn baby manual they give you at the hospital is really helpful, huh?
It's hilarious. I played with a guy once, and he ended up having 4 boys. But after the first one, he told me, he goes, it's the most bizarre experience because you have your baby, they send you home, and it's the only thing you'll ever go home with that doesn't come with like a user manual. And it's like, what the hell do you do with this thing?
Yeah, not that it's important either, right? Like,
yeah.
The funny thing about that is, and I don't know if you're going to have others now that you've had 2, but 2 together. My eldest brother said that when he took his first one home, it was like a piece of crystal china, right? Like you held it and you don't want to break it. And he goes, by the time he had his last one, when he took it home, he's like grabbing it by its ankles and like dumping it in, right? Listen, kids are the greatest experience. My only piece of advice is mine are now 19 and 21. You get out of them what you put into them. So the more time you spend, it pays huge dividends down the road. That's my one piece of advice. So yeah, enjoy them. I found the infant stage the most challenging, but they come out of it pretty quickly, and pretty soon they will be real people and they will be talking back to you. So enjoy.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. That'll be fun.
So for those who don't know, because you only hear him on TSN or see him on TSN, Frankie was drafted by the Vancouver Canucks in the 5th round, 150th overall. I don't know what the stats are about being drafted in the 5th round and actually playing, but you had a hell of a career. 2011 draft, played for the Canucks in the 2012-2013 season, which is pretty cool too. Played for the Leafs and the Penguins. You remember your first game?
Yeah, I mean, how could I forget it? It was against Chicago, and Chicago ended up winning the cup that year. It was a little bit of a weird build-up towards the first game itself, like before I even got there, because my season had just finished with the Kitchener Rangers. And, after your season is done in the OHL, if you're of age, you can go play some games in the AHL. You play on like an amateur tryout. And so I did that. I went over to Chicago. I ended up playing 3 games, and I'm sitting in my hotel room one night right by the arena in Rosemont, right by O'Hare Airport. And my hotel room telephone started ringing. And I thought to myself, like, why is housekeeping calling me? Like, what the hell did I do? Because no one else would try and get a hold of you there. You have a cell phone. But I guess I was just so new to, everyone involved. My cell phone hadn't really been circulated yet within the group. So it was actually Scott Arneal calling to tell me that I got called up. And I was going to be making my NHL debut against the Hawks in Vancouver. So I had to get on a flight early the next day. And it's just very surreal, everything about it, from the game day routine to the media surrounding you, having to answer all the questions, and then going out for warm up, doing your rookie lap, and seeing Kane and Toews and Hossa, Keith and Seabrook out there, and never mind the guys I'm playing with, right? Like Roberto Luongo and the Twins. There's there was so much going on, and then we actually won that night. We beat Chicago 3-1, which was pretty cool. So it was it's the culmination of a lot of things coming together at the right time, and a lot of people's sacrifice and hard work for you.
How much of that is in super slow-mo and surreal as it's happening?
I think the game itself is in slow motion. And what's funny? Like I had it in my head that as soon as the puck was going to drop, this game was just going to go a million miles an hour, and I wasn't going to be able to keep up with it with my eyes. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, this is pretty reasonable. Like, it's not, it's nothing crazy. I skate just as fast as these guys. I shoot the puck just as hard. And, but it takes you a little while. You think everything is going to happen so fast around you. But the game, like the day itself, I just remember getting back to my hotel room afterwards thinking, man, that was a long day. I couldn't imagine doing that 82 times in a season, but it also is different when it's your first, and, you get into your other games. It's like, it just turns into another day, basically.
And the elements of it, NHL Pro versus AHL Pro, were they noticeable?
Here's the biggest thing. I always tell people this because they ask you, what's the biggest difference between the AHL and the NHL? And I would say in the NHL, it's easier when you have the puck because guys are kind of where they're supposed to be, and guys really work away from the puck to get open and help you out. But it's harder when you don't have the puck, because what's happening with you and your team, when you have the puck, the other team is doing that as well. So now it's harder to get it off these guys. It's harder to intercept the pass, harder to anticipate things. And, it's such a difference too between guys that have made a career, let's say, playing on the third line, who are 215 pounds and they're not letting you get a sniff on them. Meanwhile, in the AHL, that third liner might be some 21-year-old, who's just trying to make a way. He's on an entry-level contract. So it is a little bit different for sure.
That's the playing side. I'm talking about the off-ice stuff. Like when you walked into the arena, how different was everything NHL versus AHL?
Well, so you have a little taste of it because you're at training camps. So you get I guess, the appetizer of it. But when you get to, I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the luxuries of it. Like,
well, that's what I'm asking. So for us,
the breakfast room, like,
general,
the breakfast room, the pregame meal, all that kind of stuff.
What about how you get treated by the guy? First of all, the coaches and the players, just that side of it.
You know what? I don't think it's that different, to be honest with you. Like, coaches in the AHL are trying to get to the NHL. Like, and a lot of those guys are probably more ready than we think. So I think the preparation that is happening on the NHL side of things is actually happening on the AHL side. And it's come a long way. And as far as the players go, like, I don't know, it's if you're not going to put a lot into it, and it's too competitive now, like, guys are going to leapfrog you in the system. So it has become, like, at the AHL level, it's probably more serious and close in comparison to the NHL than it ever has been. And it was when I played too. Like, I didn't think I was going from, some kind of amateurish men's league to all of a sudden this is the show and it's different. It's minor differences.
And when you played, who is the guy or guys that were like, not idols, but players that you wanted to meet or wanted to play against that you played against?
Oh man.
Or with.
I mean, you could start in Pittsburgh. Like, I got to play with Crosby, and I played against him as well, which was really cool. But I mean, for the short time that I was there, I was blown away just by the way he treats people. And he's I think you have an image of him in your head, and he's everything you think he's going to be and maybe want him to be and more. Like, he just goes above and beyond in so many different ways by, the way he treats people, the way he kind of prepares himself, the approach that he takes to the game, his leadership style. Like I said, I wasn't there very, very long, but I got a good taste of it firsthand. And it was, probably the most impressive person and player I've ever come across in my career. And it just goes to show you, to be at that level and achieve that kind of greatness, it's not an accident. It's not like that guy was just born gifted and had a gift that no one else had. He's the hardest working guy in every room that he's in. And that's kind of been that's been part of what put him over the top in his career.
And when you see that, and you see teams that struggle to get over the top, or players that struggle, is it easy for you to quantify what's missing?
Yes and no. I think you can. I think you can figure it out in your head. It's just there's so many challenges, there's so many logistical issues, there's so many hurdles that teams need to go through in order to kind of get over the hump, in order to get their team to where they need to go. I don't know. I have buddies. We have group chats. I see them. We got all the answers, right? We got all the solutions, just like everyone else does, right? You do this, you do that. It's like, you can't just do that, though. You can't just bring in guys like that. You can't just move $10 million. There's just so many things that are difficult to do. And there's a lot more that goes into it than that. So yeah, it's easy to say that you might know what teams need a little bit more, but being able to execute on it is a totally different thing.
What about on the individual side, though? When you look at a player specifically and you say, geez, I just wish he had more oomph, or I wish he cared more. You know what I mean? Like, you've seen
we have these
like
conversations. We, as players, we have these conversations all the time. They're on the bus. If they're on the bus, you're probably talking about someone on another team. If you're at dinner, there's a guy's on some guy on your team, you're like, that guy is the best practice player I've ever seen. And just for some reason in the game, can't figure it out. And I was probably that guy. I probably wasn't even that good at being a practice player, to be honest with you. I was average and below average at both of those. The other one that always comes to mind with that conversation is when a guy has all the tools and you can see it. Skates like the wind. Man, he's got great hands. You watch him in practice, he fires a wrister right under the bar, pops the goalie's water bottle, but then he's got nothing between the ears. And you're like, that guy, if he had any kind of toolbox, would be a $10 million player. But there's just, so those, yeah, you can definitely see it with that, especially when there's all the tools, but no toolbox.
And how much are teams working with guys like that to try and develop the toolbox, or develop whatever that is missing? Is that now a massive part of the game?
I think it's come a long way from when I was in the league till now. I think, when I was playing, it was like the only real messaging you got was from the coach, as far as, here's our schemes, here's our systems, here's what we're trying to do. And you'll probably end up doing some video sessions on a one-on-one with, the D coach or the forward coach, whatever. And now guys have invested so much more money into these third-party guys, whether it's like Adam Oates or Daryl Belfry, and they're taking the information from the coaching staff, and now they're also watching their shifts back with those guys, and they're analyzing the game in from an individual point of view. So I think players individually, they're investing more money in this, and I think now teams are a little more assertive in the way they kind of work guys with individual coaches. Like there always used to be, player development. And for the longest time, I was like, okay, what does the player development guy do? He's around, he does a couple drills before or after practice, but is there a plan, or are we just kind of out there doing some, working on our hands? I think now the player development staff, because it's not just a guy anymore, it's a whole staff of people, they have a plan from day one till day 192 of the regular season, let's say, and they want to get something out of that. So that that's just come such a long way. And I think teams are seeing the the benefit of investing more in that kind of department.
And where does analytics fit into that? Are they hammering guys with numbers?
See, the problem with that is they're definitely not hammering guys with numbers, because here's the problem with that. I think that's a great tool for the coaches to have and for management to have as far as how they want to build their team and what they value as far as those metrics. Now, if you came to me, if you were my coach and you came to me and you said, Frank, your Corsi 4 was 43% last game, that's not good enough. And I would say, okay, coach, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
And what does that mean on the ice for me? Like, are you telling me my breakouts aren't good enough? Just tell me my breakouts aren't good enough. Are you telling me you want me to shoot the puck more from the blue line? Then just tell me that. Like, I think, the analytics serve a purpose, and there probably are times where, there's certain things you could say, okay, like if you were to tell me, Frank, you passed up 6 shots last night, and you decided to pass instead of, he goes, you got to take 3 of those shots. That I can actually do something about. If you just come to me with some blanket percentage and say, this is not good enough, I'm going to say, I don't know what the hell that means on the ice.
But don't you think that's what I meant? I don't mean they're bringing an Excel spreadsheet and saying, look at your numbers here, they suck. Don't you think I would imagine that a good coach, and I don't mean necessarily a head coach, but a good coach with their student player is saying, hey, here are the things that we need to work on, and the player understands that the rationale behind that is something is showing up somewhere beating that.
Okay, I'll give you a great example, and this might not be exactly what you're talking about, but I think it just goes to show you how good coaches pay attention to what's going on with their players. So I tore my ACL, and 9 months later, I had signed with the Toronto Marlies on an AHL deal, and Sheldon Keefe was the head coach. And it was my left knee that was the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wasn't playing great. Definitely the ACL is an issue, even when you're back and cleared and ready to play. But Sheldon grabs me before practice one day, and he shows me shooting a couple pucks from the blue line last game. And he goes, watch this. And he had blown it up. He goes, watch your left knee. He goes, your left knee stays closed, and you're not hitting the net, and you're not getting anything on your shot. And then so he pulled up some NHL players. So I think at the time he pulled up like PK Subban, Brent Burns, and he goes, watch how they're doing this. He goes, watch their left knee, right-handed shots. It's open, it's facing the net, and yeah, like you can shoot the puck almost as hard as these guys, don't worry. And I was like, oh, that's a great catch. So he goes, okay, before practice today, you got 15 minutes with, I think the skill player development at the time was Scott Pellerin. Goes, you got 15 minutes with Pelly. You're going to go work on this before practice, and just keep that in mind. I was blown away. I'm like, that's a great detail that me in the moment, I wouldn't have caught, but that's a coach that kind of pays attention and cares about his players.
That's actually really cool. And a side of Keefe that we haven't heard, and we certainly didn't see in the Amazon TV special. I heard Joe Carter on the radio yesterday, and he brought up a really interesting point. I wanted to ask you about it. It's baseball, but I think I'm curious if it applies. He said that he wonders if guys are spending too much time at the park, and if they're spending too much time at analytics. And his point was, in baseball, 7 p.m. game, guys are getting to the stadium at noon, and they're sitting there and they're watching and they're prepping. And he goes, there were a lot of times Cito used to say to them, you can't show up before 5 o'clock and then just play the bleeping game. And that right now, the game is so inside their head, and that the reason guys are missing 2 feet putts is that they're so in their head about everything that they're doing that they're forgetting that they're actually just really good athletes and just go do their thing. Do you think that happens?
I do for sure. I'm guilty of that. Like, if it was not a back-to-back game, I would show up, let's say it's a 7 o'clock game. I'm showing up sometime between 4 and 4:30, because in my head, I thought, I got to tape all my sticks, and then I got to do, all this warm up and stretching, and maybe I got to put laces on, and I just want to get settled in at the arena. And all I did was sit there and think about the game. And I noticed it more on games where it was back-to-backs, where there was no morning skate. And we were just kind of getting there 2 hours before the game. We would do our meetings. You'd go right into your warm-up routine. You'd go right into on the ice warm-up and you'd play the game. And all of a sudden afterwards, you sit there in your stall and you'd say, man, that was a pretty good game. I didn't see that coming. Right? It's like you don't even give your time, your mind time to wander. You just kind of get into things. And there definitely is a lot of validity to that. I think we have a tendency to think about all these different things that, in the right time, in the right place, for sure, you need to give them oxygen in your head. But there still needs to be this element of, we're athletes, we can perform, and there is a randomness to the game itself that we need to kind of embrace, and we can't control every hour of our day on a game day.
You've played at least for one difficult character or interesting character. I don't remember who you played for in Pittsburgh.
Mike Sullivan,
who's still there.
Yeah.
How important is the character of the coach? Forget the tactician, forget the strategist, but talk to me about that. Like, the Leafs are about to bring in a much more gruff, challenging character than Sheldon Keefe, for sure. What's that going to be like?
Okay, so I'll give you a little example of how things may differ. And this is junior hockey. It's different than the NHL. But my first year in the OHL, our head coach got fired, and they were bringing back Mike Foligno. And our dressing room tightened up big time when Coach Mike came back. So much so that the veterans that had known him from the past said, don't call him Mike. Like, you have to call him Coach. Like, that's, that was the kind of ship that he ran at that age. Now, that's different. The OHL, NHL, very different. But now it's probably going to be, sometimes teams can take the persona of their coach and some of the personality traits that the coach has. And I think that's going to be the hope for the Leafs, is that there is a little more of that internal, if you want to call it FU, a little more of that. The thing that always gets me about these coaching things, it's like, the systems are the systems. They're all doing the same things. I could recite every coach's, kind of game day speech to you that I've had, because it's the same every goddamn time. So really what it comes down to is, how do you manage personalities? How do you kind of like manage your lines in order to get, the most out of these guys? And how do you keep a level of credibility with your guys? And I think that's so important. I think that's what, Craig Berube is going to have to really focus on, and he'll be good at here in Toronto. Not that Sheldon Keefe wasn't. But I just think it's like, sometimes if the coach is telling you something, you can almost be like, okay, man, you wouldn't do that, or you didn't do that. There's a little bit of that confrontation. And that should never have been like that. I don't think that was ever the case with Sheldon. Sheldon's a very good coach. But I think that's going to be something with Berube in Toronto, where it's like, if he's asking you for a little extra compete level, if he's asking you to buy into blocking shots, if he's asking you to do all these things, it's because he did it, and he would do it. Probably to this day, to be honest with you. So there's definitely going to be a level of that involved.
All right, so let me make this clear, because I'm going to reference it. I don't want to have a Babcock discussion. Asked and answered. But you've clearly stated, in my opinion, because you type your name into Google and you hit video, there's a lot of video about you and Popcorn and you and Mike Babcock, so we don't need to go there. But you are on record basically saying that a lot of the positive press he got going into Columbus was BS. My words, not yours. And what I'm hearing from you is that a good chunk of coaching, you believe, is credibility. And it seems like he had very little, in your opinion. And my understanding from a lot of coaches right now is that they are motivators. They're responsible for credibility with their players. Their assistants are really the tacticians, right? They're the ones who are setting, the coach may set the strategy, but you watch a timeout, it's the assistants who have the board out. They're drawing up the X's and O's. They have an offensive guy, a defensive guy. The Leafs, for example, just turfed the Guy Boucher that was doing the power play, right? So ultimately, is the head coach responsible? Is he really the one that's managing personalities? And does it come down to things like, I need a little bit more from you. I need you to block shots. And if you don't, I'm going to take away your ice time. Is that how you earn credibility?
Well, you can certainly hold guys accountable and hope that everyone buys into that. And you almost, you set an example early, right? Like set that line in the sand early and say, like, this is what's going to fly. This is what's not going to fly. And everyone kind of get in line. And, we talk about hard coaches. I played for John Tortorella, and I think the world of Torts. I think he's a great person. And, I had the chance to catch up with him twice this year because I was calling Montreal games and we did 2 Philly games. And if you want to talk hockey, he's happy to talk hockey. You talk about life, he turns into like a different person. He's a very nice man. And even after I played for Torts, I would see him around. I saw him when he was with Columbus. I played for Toronto. I saw him again when he was Columbus. I was playing for Pittsburgh. We saw him at the game rink and at the practice rink. Both times, handshake, little half hug, how you doing, catch up. And I only played 15 games for the guy, so I think that should kind of speak volumes. And You know what? Torts was one of those guys where for better or worse, right or wrong, it was black and white and there was no gray area. And this is what it was. And everyone kind of knew. And whether that was going to make us a good team or a bad team, that was the way we were doing things. And yes, he made adjustments as time went on. And like every coach makes mistakes, every player makes mistakes. That stuff seems to happen. But he's a great example of that, where it's like, this is the standard we're setting. This is how we're going to do things. And everyone's going to be held to that standard. And it makes it easy for everyone across the board to understand exactly what the team is trying to accomplish. And there are certain instances where, coaches let things go for certain guys. It's like, oh, you can do that. And there probably needs to be a little bit of that. But once the other players on the team see that those guys are never being held accountable, and they're just because they're who they are, they can kind of do whatever they want. You lose guys that way. You can lose guys just as much that way as you can by really hammering on guys, and kind of, making your message way too crystal clear. Like you can lose guys both those ways.
How'd you get into the media?
Oh man. Do you know who Al's brother is?
Of course.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. So Al's brother sent me I had done a few overdrive hits in the past.
As a player.
Yeah, I did. As a player, I did a couple Leafs lunch. I did a couple overdrive hits. And so the grappler would have reached out for the overdrive ones. And I was home from the KHL. I was rehabbing an injury. And my buddy Al's brother said, we have a chair to co-host Leafs lunch for a couple dates if you want to give it a try. And I said, yeah, sure. And then from there, one of our TSN producers for live events, Sam Cicerello, reached out to me and said, we have a new property at TSN, the CHL on TSN, and would love to give you a try run here to do some TV analysis with that, see if you like it. So I think we committed to 3 games at the time. So it was going to be 3 weeks. And then from there, I enjoyed it. So the radio kind of said, well, why don't we get you working with the Tap Man, doing Leaf games on 1050, pre-games, intermissions, and post-games. They were just kind of rotating a bunch of local beat writers through that. So I said yes. And, next thing you know, it kind of snowballed into this thing. And here we are. And, now I'm doing panels, calling games, and really, really enjoying the work that I'm doing for TSN.
So you switch to the dark side, so to speak.
That's what everyone says. Why do they say that?
I'm just kidding. You're good at it. And I will tell you that in a world that desperately needs young, fresh talent, it's good to have you. Those of us that care worry about that a lot. You bring up an interesting character in the current coach in Philadelphia who has a interesting reputation with the media.
Mm-hmm.
How is it dealing with that person as a media member, or did you not have to?
So the way I go about things, and I'm very new to calling games and being around morning skate as a media member, is I will go to the coaching scrum and just kind of hang out on the side. And if it's a coach I know, aka Torts, I will just do a little wave and, hey, can I get a couple minutes? And if it's not, I just kind of, whatever information I have from what they talked about during the scrum is what I got, and hopefully there's something good in there we can use for the game that night. I'm trying to find a balance between, of course, you want to put in FaceTime, you want to have credibility, like we just talked about with the people whose games you're calling, but also don't want to overstep at all. So I think I'm still trying to find that balance as a young member of the media.
When you go into locker rooms and you talk to guys, you're not that far removed. You're not an old man. There's players still playing who you probably know, including the current captain in Pittsburgh. How do they view the relationship with the media, the role of that, especially in the age of social media, where they have phones, unlike Mitch Marner, who says he doesn't pay attention? We know they pay attention. What's the role of the media to them?
Okay, so just quickly on the phones thing, like I made a point when I played for Toronto because I wasn't going to give up Twitter. Let's be honest. I'm addicted to Twitter, and I'm addicted to Instagram. Like, it's a full-on addiction. They have me, and it's okay to admit that. What I did was I just started blocking, everyone in that market. And I've actually recently had to unblock everyone because I rely on them now, and they're actually colleagues. And, I sit up on press row with them. And one gentleman actually said, why the hell did you block me? I never wrote anything bad about you. And I had to explain to him, I just didn't want to see anything. Anyways, so, it's interesting that relationship, because I think once you cross over to this world and you're on the media side of things, I think guys, their tone and how comfortable and relaxed they are around you seems to change for sure. I've been in dressing rooms where I'm having a conversation with guys, and it's just like catching up. Hey, how's your dad doing? A good time on the father's trip back in the day, whatever. And then once you kind of switch it to hockey, the tone changes from buddy to I might be on the record now, so I got to do the ums and ahs and pucks deep and all that stuff. And I'm almost like, okay, I don't have a notepad. I don't have a recorder. We're not, I'm just trying to talk to you about hockey because I'm generally curious. I haven't been in the league since 2018. I would love to know how you feel. Like, I got to stay current on these things, right? But there is, and I think it depends on the team as well, Jonah. Like, there's some dressing rooms I was in this year, a couple ex-teammates, and we were just talking like it was old times. And I may as well have been, on his team still. And then there's some guys where it's like you walk in and you're wearing a media pass, and it's like you're a very different person now. So it does depend on the team as much as it depends on the relationship that you may have with the player.
Is it more the team, or is it more the player, in your opinion?
I think it's more the team, for sure. Like, I think some teams are more guarded because of the attention that they get, and I can't blame them, to be honest with you. Like, I think, with the attention that some teams get, they do need to protect their players and make sure that there isn't, a two-line quote that gets blown out of proportion, because that can happen. And it happens very easily, actually, because you never know who's looking to make a name for themselves on the media side of things. If players could just let it fly in the room and not have to worry about that, and not have to worry about, am I on the record? Am I off the record? Can I trust that guy? Players would love to just have conversations with you and let it fly. And I actually find some of the older guys are a little more willing to just kind of talk to you like you're one of the guys still. Do you remember this year when the neck guard thing started happening? Mm-hmm. I was down in Toronto's dressing room, and I just wanted to go down there and ask a couple of the guys, would you consider it? Because I kind of think, hey, it's smart to put one on. But at the same time, I was in the NHL. I know the way guys feel about protective equipment. Guys think it looks goofy and stupid and all that stuff. And quite honestly, a lot of the guys talked to me very openly and candid about it and gave me thoughtful answers. And not on the record, obviously, but I was really impressed with that. But I think sometimes when it comes to hockey, it's more guarded, hockey specifically.
But isn't it easier on the player to have that relationship with the media, especially it's all about earning trust? I mean, if you say to a player, we're just talking, it's off the record. If you take that on the record. It's done. You may screw them,
Yeah.
but you're done. No one will, like, it's.
Are you though? Like,
Oh,
are you? Yeah.
Yes, you are. And
You
I'll
should
tell
be.
you what. I'll tell you why you're done. Because there's only so many players, there's only so many teams, and that player is going to go into WhatsApp or whatever the players are all using in their chat groups, and he's going to say, I spoke to Frankie. He told me it was off the record. It's now on the front page. Don't talk to him. You can't trust the guy. He's done. No one will ever talk to you again.
Yeah.
So
it's fun.
That,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems to me that, first of all, there's a good percentage of the guys that are going to retire before they want to, and they're going to need something to do. Two, what I've learned doing this is the only thing worse than people being not talked about is people not being talked about. So
Right.
It is a relationship business, and they know that you have a job to do, and part of that job is being in a broadcast booth, and they're only helping you do your job better.
Well, that's the thing I always keep in mind. It's like the more access we get to coaches and players, the more we can, get things right in the booth. And all of a sudden, we're not speculating. And it's like, we talked to the coach this morning, and coach told us he really likes the way this guy is playing, even though he's -8 in his last 6 games. I don't know. Like, we can, we can get things right, which is more important than anything. Like, we don't need to be early. We don't need to be first. We just need to get things right.
I mean, I don't know. As an idiot fan, I always think that the best analysts are the most connected. That's my conclusion. It's not that they're the smartest. It's that they're the best. They're the most connected. That they know.
When I was playing, I always appreciated when, Ray was doing a game. Ray was always in the room. And
right.
I'd always have a conversation with Ray. I can't tell you, like, just every time, like, hey, and I was a nobody. Like, I was the guy who just had to bag skate, and I'd have a conversation with Ray. Same with Elliott. Same with CJ. Gord Miller was in the room a lot. Like, I don't know. Like, it was when I saw those guys around, the guys that are calling the games and the guys that are kind of the, bigger kind of on-air personalities. It was nice to have conversations with them. I appreciated it.
So when you think about today's player, let's I want to talk about Mitch Marner for a second. And I want to talk about players in general. And listen, there's a lot of what I call clickbait right now. People talking, is he going to wave? Is he not going to wave? What's going to happen? What's not going to happen? There's only a certain number of people who really know. And I don't know if you're one of them, and I'm not going to ask you.
I'm not.
Okay,
I am not. I'm out of the loop.
Okay. How much do guys actually talk about that amongst themselves? Like, he's got a no trade. Ultimately, it is up to him. But from the peripheral, I don't know the guy. He looked pretty damn miserable all year compared to what he usually looked like. How much is market happiness play into things as a player, in your opinion? Like, when guys talk about it, is it a job, or is happiness really important to these guys today?
It is important. Happiness is important as much as it's a job. And you almost get into the realm of, when you're talking about all the money that these guys make, over 8 years, let's say, is $5 million over 8 years when you're making $88 million to $92 million. Is that changing your life in any way? Is there something that you can't do at 82 million that you can now do at 88 million? No. It's the exact same life you're living. So can you find a little more happiness by doing something different? There is something to be said for that. And sometimes, happiness is, like, as much as it's an external thing, there's external factors. Sometimes it's internal stuff too. Like, you might have to just work on yourself and find something that helps you internally. As far as the conversations around contracts and money, those don't really happen out in the open with players. Like, it's not like we're sitting at dinner with 4, 5, 6 guys and so-and-so's talking about, no, I'll waive, or I won't waive, or I want this, I want that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe guys are, it's like you're hanging with a buddy one night, having a couple beers, and you might talk about it that way, but it's very hush-hush, very quiet when it comes to that stuff. That's, in my experience anyways, that's not something that is like an open conversation among teammates.
So I'm just going to delve into that a little bit. forget the contract, forget the money. That's very personal. That's like health. I get that. But you don't think he has a guy or two on the team who he's confiding in?
I think he would, but I think it's more on like just an individual thing, like, hey, what would you do? Like, what would you do in this situation? I think you have to have, I mean, we all work in industries. We all have colleagues. I have some colleagues that I'll tell a little more to than.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
no, that's why
I think so.
So
or even guys around the league. Maybe he's got a best buddy on another team that he talks to more. That's probably more likely, is you have a buddy that you go way back with that plays on a different team, and that might be the guy you confide in more than someone on your own team.
Like, I saw the picture of him at lunch or having an early morning coffee with Berube. I gotta believe he gets into the car and he makes 3 phone calls. His wife, his agent, and a playing buddy. You think I'm nuts?
Well, the wife, probably he can wait till he gets home. Okay. The agent for sure. And then I don't know, maybe the dad, like dad is like,
in that case for sure. In that case for sure.
Yeah. But you're not off on that at all. Yeah, that's kind of the way it is. Like, I think with something like that, you might take a few minutes and they're like, I need to debrief this with someone. And you have to have a support system. Like playing hockey, and he plays at home, so it's a little bit different. Everyone's around you all the time. But I always found, like, even when I was away playing, like, you have to have a group of, whether it's parents, sibling, best friends, wife, girlfriend, whatever. You have to have a support system with different opinions and different voices. It's important to have people that you can lean on in that way, because it's too hard. It's too hard to do it on your own. There's a lot. There's so much that happens and so much that changes. I always found that was the hardest thing to deal with, is the fact that with one phone call, your life could be completely changing tomorrow. And, it's kind of something that you're always cognizant of.
And, Ryan O'Reilly comes to Toronto. Clearly, in my opinion, didn't love the Toronto thing.
You mean traffic on the Gardiner?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have to imagine that it's not for everybody. There's something to be said in playing in markets where, look, you play in LA, you can go wherever you want and nobody's going to care, right?
Steven Stamkos didn't sign in Toronto. He could have. He had the boardroom meeting.
Yeah.
They probably they should have gone to a pub in Unionville instead of bringing him to a boardroom. It's just, it's not everyone's wired the same way.
The Starbucks in Etobicoke at 7 a.m.
Right. Not everyone's wired the same way. Not everyone wants to do what John Tavares did.
It's not just that. How hard is it? Sorry. How all-encompassing is it to play in Toronto if you're from Toronto?
Well, okay, first of all, playing for the Leafs was such a dream come true. Like, such a surreal thing. For however short it was, however tumultuous it was one of the coolest things that I ever got to do. So I have to make that abundantly clear. As a Toronto kid, grew up loving the Leafs. All that was amazing. But I can understand how, if you're not from Toronto and you don't have ties to it, how much, it's a lot. It's a lot. But
it's a lot even if, sorry for interrupting, it's a lot even if you are, right? Like,
maybe even more. Maybe even more, because now all you got, Ricky from grade 11, texting you at 1:30 on a game day saying, I haven't talked to you in 8 years. Can I get tickets for tonight? Right. And it's like, can you lose my number, please? There's that kind of stuff, for sure. Like, it's a different beast, especially being from here, having everyone here. You're going to play 41 home games. At 41 home games, you got people to go talk to and see afterwards. And it's great, but it's also exhausting, because it's also, you don't know who the hell showed up tonight, and you might have to go talk. I don't know. It sounds like I'm nitpicking, but I think if you're in the moment and you live it, it's a different thing than when you talk about it. It sounds like I'm almost being a little ungrateful, which is not. It's not.
I'm the opposite. I can't imagine what it would be like every time you go to the dry cleaner, every time you go to a restaurant, every time you go anywhere, being stopped, and that not being a little bit annoying, even though you from Toronto and it's your dream. I get it. That's my point.
Yeah. You know what's funny? So when I started dating my wife, I was playing for Toronto, and she asked me early on into our relationship, so do people recognize you when you go places? And I would say, no, not really, which was true. Like I didn't think that people recognized me. Like I wasn't on TV. Like I was in the press box, and I played the odd time. And then for some reason, every time we went out to dinner, hey Frankie, hey, like from across the street almost. I'm like, what the hell is going on? She's like, I thought you said no one recognizes you. I said they don't, but I don't know. Maybe they're looking at me now because I'm standing next to you. But it's just people know who you are, and they're passionate. People just want to win a Stanley Cup here. I can't tell you how many times I'm out and about, and I'll be at a bakery or I'll be at Tim Hortons. I don't know. Just pick somewhere where I am. The golf course. This is a popular one at the golf course. Some older gentleman will come up to me and say, I just want to see them win one before I die.
Right.
Like that's the bar now. Like people just want to see one before they die. So there's, it's been a long time here.
Do you hear that more often, or do you hear Hayes is a fraud more often?
Yeah, I'm hearing Hayes is a fraud a lot these days. At the Memorial Cup, it was everywhere. I was at the TELUS Cup in Nova Scotia. It was everywhere. But one guy came up to me and he goes, why is Hayes a fraud? And I couldn't answer it. So
it shows you the popularity of the show.
Yeah.
If you had to bet Draisaitl back to Edmonton, Marner back to Toronto, which one do you think is more likely? And I'm not going to say now, because I think I'm going to say next fall.
Next fall. Oh man.
They both have a year left, right?
Yeah, both have a year left. I think if Edmonton doesn't win, there's going to be a part of Draisaitl that says, I want to do this with McDavid, like it's unfinished business. Okay. So I would say Draisaitl probably more likely back to Edmonton. I could see him really kind of sticking with McDavid and saying, like, let's do this together. I feel like they have a connection that way.
And the other guy?
It's so hard to say. It's so hard to say just because of all the elements of what has transpired here. Only one playoff series win in all those years, and the changes in the management and staff, and I don't know. It's hard to get a read on it because it just hasn't worked here so much. Edmonton at least has been knocking on the door, and now they're finally playing for a cup. Whereas here it's like, it feels like it's so far away. Like watch the Stanley Cup final and try and insert Toronto into one of those games. Or any of those games along the way. It doesn't feel like they're that close at all.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I'm old enough to remember the last time the Leafs actually advanced past the first round, so I can tell you what that was like.
Yeah. I am too. I'm a millennial, so getting older.
Well, you remember them, those series against Ottawa and Detroit, and it was fantastic.
It was fantastic. It was different back then too. Like I remember, we were waving flags outside, going around honking horns, and now it's just kind of okay. It's the playoffs. We'll see. Everything's
changed. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully, we'll have you back. I think it's going to be. It is Florida could eliminate Edmonton any day now. We'll see what happens. The season is just dragging on. It is really late into June already. And then literally drop of a hat, we got the draft, and then free agent frenzy, and then everybody can bleep off for the summer, the Olympics, and then you blink and it's training camp. So I hope you and your wife, I'm assuming she finished law school, maybe she's a lawyer when if she goes back to work when the kids are well enough to be on their own or with somebody else. Enjoy your time, and hopefully we'll speak to you again over the summer.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. We'll do it again soon.
Hope you enjoyed today's discussion with Frankie Corrado. I think there's some really unique nuggets there that you haven't heard before. His insights on successful coaches, what his career was like with, John Tortorella. A lot of people don't like John, hearing how it's like now, his relationship with players when he goes into locker rooms. Really cool, insightful stuff. I hope that you found that unique. I certainly did. As always, be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to this, whatever your podcasting network of choice is. If it's YouTube, you can follow along there as well. Please tell everyone about it. We do appreciate that. At the same time, follow on all your social networks at YYZ Sports Media on TikTok, on Twitter, and on Instagram. At the same time, if you want to get in touch with me, you can DM me on those platforms. At the same time, you can email me. Email is jonah@yyzsportsmedia.com. And we will see you next time in the press row. Thank you very much.